At Georgia Power, we believe our lake should be filled with water, not trash. That a healthy honeybee population will pollinate a healthier environment. That building homes is just as important as powering them. That's why we believe what we do off the grid is just as important as the clean, safe, reliable, affordable energy we provide on it. And that's a different kind of energy.
Thank you to our sponsors, Georgia Power. We are back. We have in the studio with us Ms. Megan Gordan-Kane. Thank you so much for just starting the conversation off with such fire and excitement. Before we went to the break, I asked you, how does this heartbeat bill disenfranchise women and, in a sense, empower men? What are your thoughts on that?
How do you empower people who are already in power? Like, this bill was passed by men, and we saw so many great photos come out that really proved that. There was a photo of our Senate Republican caucus before they passed the bill, and it was a picture of Renee Antoine up in the front. She's the senator who sponsored the bill in the Senate, and then behind her, it's literally a whole bunch of white men in suits. And that's it. That's literally it. And it's like, these are the people who are voting to support this bill. And we saw the same thing in Alabama. That photo went viral. It's literally the only people who voted for the bill were older white men in suits. Those were the people voting to take away women's rights to decide what to do with their bodies. And I don't want to belabor the point too much because I know we don't have a lot of time. But one thing that I think has not been getting enough play in the discussion on this bill is that I feel pretty confident that this bill literally only passed because Governor Kemp put all of his political clout on the line for this. When it passed the House, a group that has a strong Republican majority passed by 3 votes. And then it had to come back to them after the Senate made some changes, passed by 2 votes. Barely passed the chamber. And throughout that whole process, Governor Kemp had staff calling people. He's emailing the entire chambers videos of I support this bill and I really hope y'all pass it. He was putting everything he had on the line to get this bill passed.
And even with that, not to cut you off, why women though? What good does it do to prevent women from making this decision that will essentially is our own decision to make? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's just pure politics. We tried coming in with facts about all the harm this bill would do. Even if you disagree with abortion and think it should be illegal, this bill is still a mess. And nobody wanted to hear the facts. There was no conversation about that. It was all everyone was thinking about, the promises Governor Kemp made in his election, or what they're going to have to deal with in a primary. Or we were even hearing that some folks were saying well, I'm just going to go ahead and vote with this, even though I think it's terrible, because there's no way courts will uphold it, and so I can just take the political easy way out.
So even if it is upheld and it takes effect 2020, right? And let's say it's this time next year, and a woman finds out that she's pregnant, and it's at the 6-week line, or it's a little bit after. What happens then? What is she to do?
Drive to another state.
But isn't that illegal if she were to do that and she's found out?
No.
Okay, so break down the law so that way we understand what our rights are as women.
A few different components of this bill. First, obviously, no abortion after 6 weeks. And I want to emphasize, most people don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks. My best friend is about 5 months pregnant right now. She found out at about 7 or 8, and she was tracking her fertility. So this is already going to exclude most folks. Exceptions are for rape and incest if you file a police report, and we all know that less than a quarter of people file a police report. And then exceptions for if the pregnant person's life or health are at risk, or if the pregnancy is inviable, if there's something wrong with the fetus that no way you're going to have a healthy birth. So those are our few exceptions to this ban. Beyond that, just nothing. No abortions after 6 weeks. And one thing that just did not come up in the conversation, if someone comes in and they're like, I'm 5 weeks pregnant, I'm 6 weeks pregnant, I want to have an abortion, we have to check first, the law has changed it, so we have to check that there's no fetal heartbeat. I won't get into the fetal development issues. There is not a heart and a heartbeat at that point in the pregnancy. But anyway, the only way to check for those early heart tones is through a vaginal ultrasound. So if you want to get an abortion in the state of Georgia, even before that limit, you're going to have a large wand stuck up your vagina. And I'm sorry to be vulgar, but that's just messed up. And then we shift over to the even more problematic personhood components of this bill. Because this bill is designed to get to the Supreme Court and to challenge Roe v. Wade, and so to do that most effectively, they literally changed the definition of a legal person under Georgia law in 200 different places in our state code. And so we have a whole legal team that's still going through and looking at all those different sections they changed and trying to figure out what they just did. But they just did a lot more than ban abortion. For example, we are already fairly confident that the state already has laws prohibiting folks from forcing a minor to smoke or inhale secondhand smoke. So if I'm pregnant and I have a cigarette because I'm trying to wean off and I'm quitting, I have legally just forced what is technically now a legal minor to smoke, and that is a crime that I can go to jail for.
So tell me this much, because I know we're running out of time, and how can we as women be more involved so that way if we say, look, either I'm pro-choice or I'm pro-life, what can we do to at least change some of the terms of this bill before it is officially made into law?
Nothing. The bill, the bill has been passed. It is out of our state government's hand now. It is all up to the courts. And so definitely I encourage folks to still call your elected officials and tell them how mad you are. But in terms of literally changing what they just did, it's done. They can't take back what they just did. But there is a lot that we can do in this fight going forward. And I want to really emphasize that there are a lot of folks out there, I'm sure, who might identify as, say, personally pro-life but politically pro-choice, who might say, I personally would never get an abortion, but I think that option should be there for folks. If you are in that category, we need you to also be plugging in and getting involved, because I think it's probably become very clear to folks at this point that the legal right to a safe abortion is not something that we can take for granted at this point. So if you think that should be there for other people or just for you, if you don't think that someone who's 10 weeks pregnant should have to drive to what state didn't just pass a ban, Tennessee, South Carolina, North Carolina, to get an abortion, then you also need to be engaging with your state elected officials on this issue, even if it's not one that you're necessarily
one last question. Are you afraid that if the bill is this time next year and so forth, that if it's not overturned, that there will be more unsafe abortions that take place?
Yes. But there's sort of some nuance I want to add to that, and I'll try to be quick because I don't want to.
Go ahead.
I know we're short on time. So there are safe options for self-managing abortion with medication these days, because we've had for a while now what's called medication abortion, where you just go in, you take some pills, and that basically causes a miscarriage. If folks were to do that, at any point in a pregnancy, they can just take the medication safely. The World Health Organization has a regimen for this. Women in countries that have already banned abortion have been doing this for years now safely. So in that sense, I'm not worried, because there is a safe option for self-managing abortion. What worries me is folks who don't know that, because it is never going to be safe to try to stick something inside your own uterus, or to have someone who's not a qualified healthcare provider.
But can that be done after 6 weeks with this bill?
Not legally, but safely, yes.
So how do you get that if you decide that you want to terminate your pregnancy in the state of Georgia?
So there are a few international organizations that will ship the medication to people or provide the information. Also, the misoprostol which is one of those medications. It's very common medication. This is actually the reason that medication abortion as a regimen was discovered, because in research unsafe abortions in countries with total bans, they found that Brazil had very low rates of people being hospitalized for complications. And so they went and they're like, what are y'all doing? Why is this so, why are you having so few complications? And the women there were like, well, there's just this common medication that has a big don't take while pregnant label, so we take it while we're pregnant. And that's how we realized that misoprostol triggers miscarriages.
Okay, so our time is up. I can talk with you forever.
Anytime.
Hopefully not about this, but about something else. How can people contact you?
So, if you just go to feministcenter.org, you can find Feminist Women's Health Center and all of the stuff that we do. Probably about to unleash some trolls. I'm on Twitter at Megan Lane G. If you want to talk about these things, if you troll me, I will block you. I'm not.
No negative.
I'm not trying to debate people. Like, it's just just not something I do. But that's where you can find me and find out more about my work.
Thank you, Miss Megan, for being here. All right, we will be right back.
Knowing what's underneath your feet is important, especially when you're planning to dig. Contacting 811 before you dig, even for small jobs, prevents potential injuries and service interruptions. Just submit your request at least 2 business days before your work to have underground power lines and other buried utilities marked. There's no cost. Oh, you're right, digger. It's easy to submit your request online at mygeorgia811.com on your smartphone, tablet, or computer. Georgia Power and Georgia 811, working to keep you safe and connected.
Now, we want to share with you the conversation we had with Senator Nikema Williams of District 39. She is currently the chair of the Democratic Party of Georgia. Before she became senator, Williams served as the vice president of public policy for Planned Parenthood Southeast. Our In Contact community correspondent, Jared McKinley, sat down with her to get her perspective on this topic as well. Take a look.
So the abortion providers that we have in the state of Georgia the majority of them are in the metro Atlanta area. And if abortion is essentially banned in the state of Georgia, then that leaves women in Atlanta without access. And we already saw what happened in our neighboring states. And so women are going to have to drive to great lengths to get the care that they need. And we all know that your constitutional rights shouldn't depend on your zip code. And I was just in Illinois last week, where the state of Illinois passed a Reproductive Health Act, a proactive bill to enshrine reproductive rights in their state, to make sure that women knew, not just in Illinois but across the country, that if they need access to reproductive health care, they can come to Illinois. And the governor of Illinois signed that into law, and I was there with him to get that passed. Something like the Reproductive Health Act could absolutely happen in Georgia when we change the makeup of the Georgia General Assembly. And so that is what I'm laser focused on, to make sure that we have people working at the state capitol representing the women who sent them there. When women showed up in the capitol and said this is not what we wanted, nobody listened to them. I stood in the well of the Senate and I read story after story of my constituents right here in Atlanta about how this bill would affect them, about pregnancies that they had that they terminated. Some of them very much wanted pregnancies, some of them not wanted pregnancies, because you don't have to, it's nobody's business why you choose the healthcare options that you choose. It's between you and your doctor. And the politicians here, the Republican politicians, decided that it didn't matter what women wanted. All that mattered was their political agenda. And so when we get people in office that truly represent the people that sent them there, then we'll see some proactive legislation. So women are showing up like never before. In 2018, we saw an unprecedented number of women running for office. We saw women showing up to vote in numbers that we've never seen in Georgia before. And that did not stop on election day. I think what we have learned is that women are realizing that democracy doesn't start and stop on election day. And they've been showing up at the Capitol. They've been filling the halls of the Capitol, watching what was happening. And this is something that I've never seen before. I've worked at the Georgia State Capitol for 12 years now, 10 not as a legislator and now 2 as a legislator. And this is something that I've never seen before. And the rallies are continuing. Women are signing up to run for office themselves, because if someone is in a seat that is not willing to listen to them, then they're going to put their name on the ballot to replace them. Georgia is one of 14 states that has not expanded Medicaid, which means that we have the ability to get federal dollars to help cover people that are the working class poor in our state. So right now what happens is if you are very, very poor, then you have access to the Medicaid program, the federal Medicaid program. However, if you have means to buy into the Affordable Care Act, then you can buy a plan on the healthcare, the federal healthcare plan. But what Georgia decided to do was, because they were in opposition to our president who put the Affordable Care Act in place, President Obama, our leadership at the time decided that they weren't going to expand Medicaid. They were going to put this back, take it away from the governor's control and put it to the legislators. Well, this year what happened was we flipped the script and sent it back to the governor. So now we've hired a consultant to determine what we want to do. Well, we already know that people need care. We have nearly 500,000 people in the state of Georgia that would get health care if we only expanded Medicaid. But we are doing something that is going to cost the state more money but cover fewer people simply because of politics. So in November, after the election, we saw that there were an unprecedented number of people that felt like their voices weren't heard and their votes weren't counted. And constituents showed up. We had a special session, and voters showed up in the rotunda of the Capitol voicing their concerns, demanding that every vote be counted. I saw a number of my constituents there in the rotunda, and I went and I stood with them. Capitol Police came and dispersed the crowd and arrested people who did not leave the Capitol, including me as a state senator in the body that I serve in. Standing with my constituents, I was arrested and taken to jail simply for standing with my constituents to demand that every vote be counted. So just recently, in the last 2 days, I learned that my charges have been dropped. However, the charges were dropped, but it was dropped with kind of like a reprimand. And my case was sent over to Cobb County, and everybody else's. There were 15 people arrested that day. 14 of the cases were processed in Fulton County, and the charges were just dropped because there was no, the solicitor did not find a way to prove the case. Okay. That they should have been arrested in the first place. My case was sent to Cobb County, and the solicitor there sent a 3-page letter saying that my arrest was punishment for the crime that I committed, and that's why he wasn't going to continue to prosecute because I'd already been punished.
As always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.